Thank you guys. It's been great. I was egging them on. I'm like, let's just continue the conversation that we had in the hallway in here. Don't stop. Just keep going with it because the dynamic with this group has been great because the partnership amongst this group is so great. Coming from my obvious bias in that field, I've had the pleasure of getting to know each one of you this week. Well, over the course of last week, I guess, well, if we include emails, right? And both the collaboration, the transparency, the level of willingness to partner in sort of the true sense of the word, I think is probably what's fueling a lot of the ROI, broadly defined, right? Because a lot of the topics I think we're going to cover during this session aren't necessarily financial in nature, which is great. So, with that said, I am, let's see, which one of these awesome topics that we've covered do I want to start with? Because you can tell, right, this is a very fluid conversation. We were just having it in the hallway as well. Well, let me start with, we'll go in sequential order. Margeaux, you and I spoke first. And so I guess if you want to give kind of just a bit of your perspective that you shared with me, because I thought it was really interesting, especially when it comes to ROI in the context of community.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So I'll go. So, I work for Pepsi Beverage North America. And so that means I support our beverage business and specifically West Division. So I manage all of our professional sports properties west of Colorado, everything west of Colorado. And we look at measuring partnerships in a couple of ways. Number one, a lot of it's about sponsorship awareness, ad recall. But then the other part of it too is really where the rubber hits the road. It's how we're driving sales. I mean, it's so critical. Sales and share, ultimately share. And it's how we are leveraging partnerships in our critical customer channels. And so it's retail, and then it's food service with restaurants. And so I'm always thinking about that, though. Those are two things. And, the relative, I guess, weight of both of those really changes and it shifts. And I think it's different by market. It's a little bit different by team. But by and large, that's what I'm really focused on. And so when I sat down in season planning years ago, with the Los Angeles Rams, fabulous partner. We started talking about objectives high level. And I always tell people with partnerships, this is my philosophy. I approach season planning, I approach conversations with the sports teams much like I do, or my team does, with joint business planning at our top retail customers. We're sitting down in an organized way. We're talking about objectives, our strategy, our big bets, even if it's not maybe relative immediately or something that I would think would correlate immediately to the Los Angeles Rams. I want to share it anyway because it's a priority of PepsiCo. So back to your question and kind of in terms of measuring the ROI and the partnership value. So in that meeting with the Rams years ago, we started talking about things like, the restaurant channel is really critical for Pepsi and driving the business with our restaurant, with our customers in that channel. And how can we leverage the Rams to do that? And it was a very simple conversation. And it was like, the Rams have this certified Rams House program with local restaurants in Los Angeles. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then around that same time, PepsiCo, we developed two platforms, Dig In and Juntos Crecemos. They are platforms that give back to minority-owned small businesses. They provide resources. It's basically raising awareness, removing barriers. And so that's how this conversation evolved. And what we've created, we built, really proud of. I know the organization is, and my organization is, and the Rams are as well. It's called Friday Lunches, aptly named. We're selecting small businesses in Los Angeles, and it's this give back program. But here's the beauty and how we can connect it to ROI. So while this did start in a very simple conversation, and it started with this give back idea, and with Friday Lunches, we give these restaurants donations, we sponsor a free lunch. So it really is about raising awareness and removing barriers. But we are actually using this now as a vehicle, as a method to attract new business. It's been really powerful for us. So it's a conversion tool. And sure, again, we'd love to be altruistic. And as I said, it started with a very simple conversation talking about priorities. But now what we've been able to do is we've been able to actually bring this to business prospects and convert them through the program. And I'm really excited to say there is a local gem of a restaurant, Casita del Campo in Silver Lake. They've been a customer, or they previously had our competitor as the pour in that restaurant for decades. We approached them with this Friday Lunches program with the LA Rams, and we signed them up on a 5-year deal with Pepsi. I mean, and it was really the program that brought it over the finish line. I mean, it's amazing. And this guy, the owner is just crazy for the LA Rams. He's hosting away game watch parties. He's got a whole room decked out with Rams branding. Now, of course, Pepsi's there too. So, it's good. So it's this feel-good element. We're giving back. We're working together. We're aligning on objectives that are mutually beneficial. But then ultimately, the ROI comes from examples like that. And then just one other thing that I'll say, we also use this program when we talk to prospective clients and customers rather. They might not necessarily fit the profile for the program, but we're able to use it and talk about it, and it's part of the sell story. And so that's how we realize the ROI there. So I know we didn't really talk about that, but I wanted to bring that up because it is so powerful. And within my organization, because this model, this framework has worked so well, we're actually rolling this out across many other teams across the country.
Thank you for
in many markets.
Thank you for touching on that. Yeah, I was hoping you were going to tie it back in to that. Casita del Campo.
Casita del Campo in Silver
Silver
Lake.
Yeah.
Wonderful. You know it? All right. I live in Orange County, but I was told this is like an institution in Los Angeles, and again, it's a true gem. I was there for filming. We filmed content there, and it was phenomenal.
Noted. No, I appreciate that. I think, so I wanted to start off with that, and you touching on the ROI of it is critical, and I think it's important. But in the end, we're all business people, right? And the board has to be satisfied, shareholders have to be satisfied, and of course our customers have to be satisfied. One of the topics that Reid and I discussed was around this, analytics and data and decision-making that's driven the partnership forward. And so, Reid, if you want to touch on that topic and how sort of that backs into ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first off, there's a couple ways to look at it, and obviously most of us here are going to know that there's qualitative and quantitative results, right? And I think in an area like sports, you have to be very cognizant of both. Obviously, to your point, you want to make sure that you're driving sales and business, and shareholders are appreciative of what all the things you're doing. But at the same time, there's that community impact that might not have a dollar sign to it, but is very impactful. For America, in the last few years, we've kind of undergone a new, I'll say, measurement process, strategy, whatever you want to call it. And we are very data-driven now, and that's across the whole organization, commercial, network planning, revenue management, all of those really fun and exciting airline terms that I don't want to bore you with today. But at the end of the day, there's so many things we can look at, and I think from the sports perspective, we've tried to take that approach and collecting as much data as possible, which to a point can be a bit overwhelming. You start to realize what's actually important and what's not important. And for us, I think it comes down to kind of what you mentioned as well earlier, Margeaux, the best partnerships and the partnerships that start to stand out, even with all this data, are still the ones that want to work with you just as much as you want to work with them. And so we've kind of came up with this phrase, which isn't really a buzzword or anything, but stickiness, right? It's like, how can you create these partnerships that are sticky? And for us, that goes across multiple things, right? The Rams, we fly the Rams to all their away games, right? So that in of itself is an awesome component of the partnership, but also that extends to so many other arms, right? We show our service that they're willing to accept and use, so thank you for that. But we also are able to use that for storytelling purposes. Last year we put 2 fans who won a sweepstakes on the team plane to fly to the Cowboys to create these once-in-a-lifetime experiences that hopefully they'll talk about with their friends and send the link to sign up, because that's also something we're measuring. But at the end of the day, that one person might not have bought 6 first-class flights, but we know that that's driving impact and results. And so it really becomes a balance of how you define the qualitative versus the quantitative and kind of mend that together. But then again, it always boils down to the partners that are going to adapt to your needs and change with you. As an airline industry, we've gone through quite a bumpy ride the last few years. Obviously, things like COVID affected transportation pretty heavily, but majority of our partners have kind of worked with us to adapt to our needs as we've changed them. And again, I think the Rams are a great kind of example of that to work with us. So hopefully that answers your question, but I think for us it is really just kind of a balance of all the different pieces and collecting as much data as possible. That way you can make those good decisions, but also being very wary to not have like the paralysis by analysis mindset, because that can also slow you down quite a bit.
Thank you. No, absolutely answered my question, and you touched on the sort of the best transition tangent, if you will, to a question. Vanessa, you and I talked about what Paramount's done with regards to data, with regards to both member experience and in collaboration with, I think, that level of transparency that Reid mentioned as well. So I'll let you sort of go from there.
Yeah, I think the stickiness, right? The partnerships have to be reciprocal, right? You both have to be getting something out of it, but it's also, is it authentic to, especially with sports, is it authentic to the audience that is tuning in, that is going to be watching, that is going to be participating? As we all know, when someone loves something, they talk about it. When they hate something, they love talking about it even more. And so I think, coming from, I oversee movies and limited series at Paramount Plus on the streaming side, right? So we have this great portfolio that Sam will be able to talk about a little bit more on his panel. But from the entertainment side, right, we aligning with sports is one of the true ways to get massive eyeballs and true fans of a brand to then, be able to equate that to be fans of your brand, right? So earlier this year, we partnered with Cronky Sports with Arsenal, the football club in the English Premier League. So it was kind of this perfect marriage of, we had the limited event series Knuckles, who is the red echidna warrior from Sonic the Hedgehog, for any of you fans, or if you have kids, or if you're an adult that's a fan too. But it was this perfect alignment where timing lined up, where Arsenal was in the running for the top of the table of the Premier League. They were in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League, which airs on Paramount Plus. Their team color is red. Knuckles is red. So again, it's this, and not to mention that Idris Elba is the voice of Knuckles and is a huge fan of Arsenal. So you had this sort of perfect marriage where this was a global show launch, but again, yes, we were able to then have branding in stadium at Emirates. We were able to then participate and have, special day in the life with our Knuckles walk around character with Gunnersaurus in the UK. But again, that all goes back to global partnerships, because even if it's, I might be overseeing specifically the US launch of a show, but again, that's where social is so impactful, and that's where you need the data to be able to tell you kind of, yes, this makes sense, and where are things aligned. And for a streaming service, it all goes back to cost per acquisition, right? How much are we getting someone into our service, and how sticky is that? But you also can't be strangled by that data, right? You can't be held hostage by that data. You have to be able to see, what's the larger takeaway of conversation and brand equity and just positivity associated with your brand. So I think it was sort of this perfect alignment, and, just again, repping what everybody else has said here, is that authenticity and that true partnership.
The true partnership topic came up in all three conversations prior to connecting with Natasha. And I'd like for you to kind of give some opinions and some anecdotes if you can, because we talked a little bit yesterday more philosophically, but I guarantee that you have more specific examples that you want to dive into with respect to the partnerships here in ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. My journey is not as eloquent. I was actually trying to quit my job, and I had my letter of resignation ready, and I got a phone call from the Rams. And UNIFY is a nationwide credit union, and so they'd never done anything like this before. And quite honestly, in Southern California, no credit union was doing any sort of sports marketing. So if you can picture all 5 feet of me going into a board meeting, like I looked like a kid saying, "I want a pony," because I'm like, I want all this money because we're going to sponsor a football team. And I think my only supporter was my CEO because he loves football. So ROI became a very, very big concern for me. And I won't make Jen pay for this and martinis later, but I will say the Rams were a perfect partner for this, because I needed somebody that was going to get as crazy as I would, that was going to get innovative. And 7 years later, we still get in a room and we throw up crazy ideas and see if they'll, pan out and prove to be sticky. So right out the gates, I started using the tickets to drive membership. And within 2 years, like our membership in LA was up 30% every single time football started. So this became an easy sell to the board. In addition to that, we got crazy, and this year we started using the tickets to drive internal member engagement. And my debit card swipes are up 4,000% right now. So it's, you know, it's those things that make my job easier when I have to go in and ask for more money. But I think part of the ROI that I find amazing, and part why I love this partnership, I have a favorite, is, I'll give you an example for right now. Like, we have done player sponsorships with different players. And one of our favorites is John Johnson, JJ3, number 43. So we sign him, and calls me up and he said, hey, you know, he's really wants to do something in the community. He's really passionate about schools. So he's like, you know, can we do a backpack drive? And I was like, yeah, we can do a backpack drive. And within 5 seconds, you know, I'm talking to the Rams team, and we just start getting bigger and better with this backpack. Because JJ's like, I'll pitch in for the backpacks. And then it became, let's have bouncy houses. And then one of the Rams restaurants, Gustavo, who was in our tent, said, I'll sponsor the food. And when you look at that community impact, and just what's the big deal to me is the passion, right? I mean, that when everybody comes together, and now we're going to be impacting 600 kids, those are the unexpected moments that when I go in front of my management team and I say, hey, not only are we hitting all these ROIs, but look at these other things that we're doing. You know, and for our members, you have people that can't afford a game. You know, they've got 3 kids and they can't take them to a game. Well, when I have a player in a branch, I mean, I've literally had a mom cry. We had Todd Gurley in our branch one time, and she literally started crying, and she said, I could never afford to take my kid to a game, and they're meeting their hero right now. And that person, like, if you go on UNIFY social, there's so many stories of our members saying thank you for the tickets, and they'll literally take pictures from the seats because the seats are so good. Or they'll say thank you for this completely exclusive experience. Like, we're doing a dinner with JJ, because again, 360 engagement, we asked our members, if you drop off a backpack to our branch, you get entered to be at this dinner with John. So we're having all these members that are like, I hope I get chosen, I hope I win. So all these different ways of connecting these dots that make this partnership so powerful. And the icing on the cake is my numbers, my ROI, my debit card swipes, my members, new members joining. How many of these actual members have referred other Rams fans? Like, we have a group of our members now that meet up at a bar when they can't get to a game to watch the games together, which is crazy. And I've had to explain to them, like, no, I can't come out and drink with you. I'm pretty sure that'll get me in HR. But I love the fact that we've created this, you know, and it's been a great journey over 7 years. So I never got to send my resignation, long story short.
Nice way to bring it back around. You know, this is not intended to be a sales pitch for the LA Rams, I promise. But I couldn't help but, right? I couldn't help but notice the common themes. And working in enterprise partnerships myself, it's always the same, right? Who's sharing the data? Who's being transparent? Who's willing to step outside sort of the experientially defined or board of directors defined comfort box? Who's willing to be sort of vulnerable and creative? It really does help create more opportunities, whether it's a player's idea around a backpack drive or identifying local restaurants in the community that can help evangelize the brand, and obviously, you know, take it nationwide, right? But get on a plane and go nationwide with the story and with the example. As marketers, it's so critical for us to be there, be relevant, and whether you call it the moments that matter, or the customer decision journey, or the funnel, or the pipeline, whatever. It's so important to be relevant in those times. And when that's kind of the luxury of partnerships. You're not going it alone, right? You have an opportunity to sort of anchor yourself to another entity that's looking out for the same sort of customer base. Creative ideas, visions for the future. This one is going to be different. I don't want to pick on each one. This is sort of the pop quiz part of the session. And then we'll go to Q&A, I promise. But just looking at time, I want to make sure we have a chance to do this. Sort of visions for the future in terms of the partnerships.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the great things about a partnership, right, is that you come up with wild and crazy ideas, and they come up with wild and crazy ideas, and you see what sticks. And so I think something that's unique, again, for Paramount Plus, for being a streaming service, we have the ability to be local but also be global. And so when we do things, again, not to continue the pitch for the Rams, but when we do things like utilize the amazing creative executions at SoFi Stadium, not only are you reaching people locally in Los Angeles, but for NFL, because CBS is part of our portfolio, we get that extension so that, again, it's something that you as the person sitting in the seat watching the game have experienced, but then it's also something, you know, when the stars align, that those at home are able to engage with and be able to participate and be able to take note of. And so I think that's where, again, you have to have this sort of open flow of communication and see where is technology going, what is the latest and greatest, what are my competitors doing so that I can take that and do it better. So I think, you know, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I think for me and the partnerships that I manage across all of the professional leagues, it's really just doubling down on some of the stuff that I was talking about. It's really doubling down on how I'm leveraging the partnership, the marks, and bringing that to the channels to drive the business and to drive share. And I think there's some, like I said, with the Rams, we're doing it very well. I think there's some markets that we can be doing it a lot better. And so it's just so competitive, and consumer demand and the sentiment has changed so much, and consumers are craving value. And Pepsi, we're a challenger brand. And we really, from a market lens, like, we need to get out there and we really need to be competitive. And where that is, it's at the moment of choice. And so that's how I'm going to be continuing to leverage the partnerships and do it even more.
For me, I think it's kind of along the same lines. Like, it's so noisy out there now, whether it's digital, whether it's retail space, it's so noisy. So I think really leaning into these experiences. We just did kickoff for charity with the Rams, and I had the head of ADP, who we just signed because we're the credit union for other companies. And, you know, she's pretty fresh out the box. She's getting to know us, and she's a huge Cooper Cup fan. And we've worked with Cooper. And we were joking with him. I was like, oh yeah, if you come by our table and you say, you know, you can like give the head of ADP a high five, that would be awesome. And he really did do it. And she literally looked at me and she said, what do you want? She's like, what do you want? You want to be on site? You want to branch in like our cafeteria? What do you want? And it's that moment that right there that I think is priceless. So we'll be leaning into that, because whether it's a member or the head of ADP, I think what I've learned through this is there's so much passion around sports. I mean, I don't care if you're 5, I don't care if you're 90. They turn into a kid, right? It's like watching someone at Disneyland. And that moment, that if you can give them that moment, it is pretty priceless. It is they're going home and they're telling everybody about it. So that's what we'll kind of continue to do, is come up with crazy ideas to deliver on these experiences.
You stole a lot of what I was going to say, so I've been trying to rethink how I'm going to answer this question. But honestly, like, from an American Airlines perspective, right, like, our goal is to care for people on life's journey. We fly them all over the world, and how we can showcase that travel is better as an Advantage member. So for me in managing sports sponsorships, it's how do we take that and extend it a level further, which is how can we show you that sport is better as an Advantage member, and how can we connect you to your favorite player? How can we bring you to every Rams away game if that's what you want to do, right? Like, how can we continue to tap into these consumer passion points and touch points? And just kind of bridge that gap between a Rams fan and their favorite player, a Cowboys fan and their favorite player, whatever it might be. How can we live in that gap between consumers and their passions? And then separately, I think for us too, an interesting thing is our 100th anniversary is coming up in a couple years. And so I know right now we're starting really to kind of think of ways that we can expand on all of our partnerships, and not even just in the sports space, but community, military, even like with the hotels that we work with. How can we really blow that out of the water? Because you only get to turn 100 once. So I think it should be pretty exciting in a couple of years.
That's helpful and exciting. I didn't realize the 100 year was coming up. We're gonna have time for maybe just one question. Anybody critically have a question they want to ask the panel? Not me, just them. Well, that's good. I think we're good. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate you guys' participation.